In this video, we will look at requesting permissions at runtime. So I'm just going to read through some of the stuff here for you to understand what is requesting permission at runtime. What does it mean? So beginning in Android 6, users grant permission to apps while the app is running, not when they install the app. So in the past, before Android 6, when you install the application, you grant permissions for everything that the app uses. Now this approach, where we need to grant permission not when they install the app, but while it's running. This approach streamlines the app install process since the user does not need to grant permissions when they install or update the app. It also gives the user more control over the app's functionality. For example, a user could choose to give a camera app access to the camera but not to the device location. The user can revoke the permissions at any time by going to the app settings screen, and I'll show you that on the phone later on. System permissions are divided into two categories, and this is important. It's normal categories and there's dangerous categories. So normal permissions do not directly risk the user's privacy, and if your app lists a normal permission in the manifest, the system grants the permission automatically. Dangerous permissions, and that's the ones we need to handle, can give the app access to the user's confidential data. If your app lists a normal permission in its manifest, the system grants the permission automatically. But if you list a dangerous permission, the user has to explicitly give approval to your app. So if you click on this link there, normal and dangerous permissions, and I'm on the developer.android.com page there. So if you click on this one, it takes you to this page, and if you scroll down a bit, you will get to this table that says dangerous permissions and permission groups. So you'll see there's the calendar. To read and write the calendar is a dangerous permission. To look at the camera, using the camera, the contacts, the location, accessing the fine and coarse location, using the microphone to record audio, using some phone specifications like calling or voicemail, or read the phone state, sensors, SMSs, sending, receiving, reading, and then storage, read and write external storage. So these are the dangerous permissions that we should handle in our app in runtime. So if the user goes and he wants to use a function like write external storage, we need to first ask the user for permission in order to do that. So let's look at an app where we can demonstrate this. So what I've done here is just created a normal app there, permissions Android 6. I called the app. In the main activity, I've created a button there, and the button has the text on it that says do something, and then the ID for this button is btn permissions. Now if I go to the main activity, you'll see in the main activity that I've linked to that button. So there's the button, btn permissions. You can see that I linked encoding to that specific btn permissions ID there. And then on that button, I've set the on-click listener. And now when we click that button, we can have something run in this space there. So now if we launch this app, it will basically not do a lot. It will just give us that specific button now. So now if you click on the button, you can see nothing happens because we haven't coded anything. But what we want to simulate here is that if I click on this button, it should be like, let's say taking a picture, or want to go and take a picture, or I want to save a file to, let's say to the external storage, or whatever I want to do, will be simulated by clicking this button. Okay, so let's go into coding quickly. And what we need to do is ask the user then permission to do that specific feature and that dangerous permission. So the way we do this is to use the context compat library, and we're going to check for a self permission. So we're going to check self permission. It's going to be main activity dot this as the context, and the second argument you can see is a string permission. So the permission that you want to check for is the one that you're going to indicate here. So I'm going to say Android dot manifest dot permission, and then you can choose one of the permissions. So the one that I want to look at today, well, you can choose any one of them, but let's just go with writing to external storage. So let's say we want to save a file to the phone's memory somewhere. Okay, so then we need permission to do that. So that's what we need to do. You're going to say context compat, check self permission, the context, and then the permission that you want to check. And because this is an if statement, we need to check it against something. So I'm going to say if it's not equal to, and we're going to use the package manager for this, package manager dot permission granted or denied. So in this case, we're going to check if it's not granted. So if the permission is not granted, we want to ask the user to grant that permission. And the else part will be, the permission has been granted. We can go and save something to the external storage. So let's just show a toast here. If it's fine, we will say something like permission granted. And let's say thank you. Okay, so that's basically what's going to happen. The else there is if this permission to write to the external storage is granted, it will run the else. But if it's not granted, we need to ask the user for a question to answer to please grant this specific permission. So we're going to use activity compat again, and we're going to say request permissions. So now you'll see that the first argument there is an activity. So I'm going to use the main activity there again, main activity.this. Then the second argument is an array of permissions that you want to request for the user to actually permit. So what we're going to do there is to just create a new string array and initialize it. Sorry, it must be a string. And then the value that we're going to indicate there, you can indicate more than one value, but the one that we want to request now is to write to external storage. So I'm going to say android.manifest again, .permission again, .write external storage again. So that's the one that we want to ask the user to permit. And then the last argument there, I'm just going to go to a new line, is a unique request code. So that's the request code. So you'll see that I've just declared one at the top. So you can declare anything there, private static final int, name it whatever you like. I think the best way to name this will probably be to name it something that you can refer to writing to external storage or whatever. But I just call it unique request code, and you can put in any code there. You can actually put a 1 there if you want. It doesn't matter. That's just a unique request code. So we'll come back to that unique request code later on. So at this stage, this piece of coding there will ask the user to please grant the permission of write external storage. So let's run this quickly and see how it works. Okay, so there we've got the app running. If I click on do something, you'll see it gives me an exception. So the exception is because in the Android manifest file, we need to go and add that permission as well. So in the Android manifest file, just above your application tag, you're going to say user's permission. And then you're going to search for, you can just start typing write, and you'll get to write external storage. So we want to use that specific permission as well. So your permission needs to be listed in the Android manifest file. So remember the dangerous permissions as well as the not so dangerous permissions. For all the permissions that's not dangerous, you can just list them here. You don't need to handle them anywhere else, but it must be listed here. But for those that's dangerous, you need to list it here, and you must do or ask the user to actually permit it. Okay, so let's just run it again. It should work now with the manifest changed. Okay, so let's just try that again. If you click on it, you'll see it ask the user, allow this app to access photos, media, and files on your device. So you can see that's the first if statement. If the write external storage is not yet granted, then ask the question. So that's the question. Please allow this. So if the user clicks on allow now, that permission has been allowed. And now if the user clicks on this button again, it should go to the else part and say permission granted. Thank you very much. So if you click on that again, you'll see permission granted. Thank you. So where can you see permissions? If you go to the settings of your phone and you go into the apps section, go and find your app. I called mine permissions Android 6. You'll see there's a permissions button there, and there it gives me the permissions that I've granted. So for this app, storage has been granted. You can see it's on. I can switch it off there, go back to the app, and if I try to click on that button again, it's now going to ask me that question again. And then it's got some other options. So now if I say allow, it works 100%. But what if the user says, I don't want to do this, I want to deny there? So if the user denies, we should actually show the user some explanation to say, no, you can't really deny, please, you need to permit this, or whatever you want to say to the user. Okay, so how do we do that? That's the second part of this video. So let's just quickly have a look at how we do that. You're going to go to code and override methods, and we're going to search for the onRequest permissions result method. So it's the onRequest permissions result method. You can remove that call to super there. Now you'll see that we accept a request code, and that's that request code that we were using there, which is basically just the integer 1. And then there's going to be a list of permissions and grant results. So we're going to have a look at what we do with all of those. So the very first thing that we want to do now is if the user gets asked this question. So let's just look at that question again. There's the question. If the user, doesn't matter how the user interacts with this question, you can say never ask again and click on deny. You can just click on allow, or you can click on deny. Doesn't matter what he chooses at this specific pop-up or dialog. It will go afterwards to onRequest permissions result. And then we can check if it came from asking this specific question by using the request code. So I'm going to say if the request code is equal to that unique request code, or I could have just said if it's equal to 1, if the request code is equal to 1, then we know this method responded to this question that we asked with that unique request code. Okay, so now inside of this, if the request code is that unique request code, we can now ask a question again. Okay, so now the first thing that we want to do in this onRequest permissions result method is to check for this request code. So if we ask the user this question, do you want to allow to write external storage? There's a request code that goes with it. So we want to test if that request code that was sent through is in fact this unique request code of ours. Or you could have tested it with just a 1 there as well, because we set that one to 1, but that's just a way of making your code a bit more readable. Okay, so if the request code comes from this specific question, we know we're handling that question. So the first thing that we want to do now is to see what did the user do there. Did the user click on allow or deny, or did he click on never ask again and deny? So if he clicked on allow, that's the first if statement that we'll do here. So we're going to say if grant results at position 0 is equal to the package manager dot permission granted. So if the permission has been granted, if the user clicked on allow, that's what we want to do now. So if the user clicks on allow, this is what we want to have happen now. So I'm just going to say a toast there, display a toast, and say, let's just turn this one around. Say thank you, permission granted. Thank you, permission granted. Okay, so now the permission has been granted there. So that if the permission is granted, we're going to say thank you, permission granted. Okay, so we can test that quickly. If you run this on the app again. So let's just click on do something. So if I click on allow now, it should tell me thank you, permission granted, not permission granted, thank you. Okay, so if I click on allow, thank you, permission granted. So it goes to the onRequest permissions result. It sees that the permission has been granted and shows the toast. Now, obviously, you can take it from here to a method or whatever you want to do there. And then if I go now and I click on it again, you can see it says permission granted, thank you. So it's now going to this else, permission granted, thank you. Okay, so that's the first if statement. Now, if the user, let me just go back there and reset that. I'm going to take away that permission again. Right, so if the user clicks on it and it says allow, it goes to this if statement. So let's do the deny part now. So the else if there, if this grant results at position 0 is equal to the package manager dot permission denied. So if the user denied the permission, what we normally should do here is to give the user a bit more information about why should he permit this specific permission. Okay, so what we want to do here is to show a dialog to the user, telling him a bit more about why he needs to give us access to this specific feature or grant the permission or whatever. Okay, so we're going to use an alert dialog. So we're going to say alert dialog.builder, and let's call it dialog equals new alert dialog.builder, and let's just pass in this for the context. Now to just display a simple message, I'm going to use dialog.set message, and let's set the message as this permission is important to save a file to the phone. Please permit it, something like that. Okay, so that's the message, and then we can also set the title, and let's set the title to important permission required. Okay, so we set the message and we set the title. This permission is important to save a file to the phone. You can have a bit more longer type of message there to explain why he needs to add to have this feature on the phone or for your app or whatever. And then for this dialog, we'll have a set positive button. We'll have a positive button there, and maybe the text for the button should be okay. And then we'll use the new onClick dialog.onClick listener. Okay, so this is basically a button that's part of the dialog, and the positive button will have the text okay, and then we also need a negative button. So we're going to say dialog.set negative button, new let's just add the text first. Let's say something like no thanks. And then for the second argument, new onClick listener, dialog interface onClick listener. Okay, so there's the two buttons. We'll have the message and the title, and we have a positive button, okay, and when we click on it, it will go here. And there's a negative button called no thanks, and it will go there if it's clicked. And then we can just start showing this dialog. Okay, so now the dialog will start showing after that show method. So what's happening here? We're setting the message, setting the title, and if the user says, okay, I want to grant this permission, what should we do now when the user clicks that button? We actually want to ask the user again to permit that or to give us that permission. So I'm going to ask that same question that we did there at the top. I'm going to do that same thing again. So I'm basically going to say, please grant me permission to write to external storage. And then the user will be able to click on allow or deny again. So basically just repeating the whole process again. If the user says no thanks, he doesn't want to do that, then we can just, in this case, you can take him to a method to do something. But in this case, I'm just going to show a toast to show you the negative button. So we're going to say something like cannot be done. Okay. So that's the negative button. Okay, so if we run this now, let's run the app again. Okay, so there the app is running again. So let's just go through the coding that we've got so far. Right at the beginning, if we ask the user the question, please permit. So let's just do that. Click on the button. You can see that's the first if statement there. If the permission has not been granted, ask the question. And now the user can check allow or deny. We already checked allow. No? If we go to allow, you'll see that it will show you thank you, permission granted. Okay, so that one is already working 100%. We tested that one. Now, if the user says, or let's just run it again. If I say allow there, you'll see thank you, permission granted. So it goes to the on request permissioned result and it shows you the toast. Okay, so I'm just going to go back quickly and take away that permission again. So it's not granted. So if I click it again, it asks me the question. Now let's say the user clicks on deny. So if I click on deny now, you can see there's the dialog. There's the title, important permission required. This permission is important to save a file to the phone. Please permit it. So you can say no thanks, or you can say okay. So look at your dialog. There's the message and the title. You can see the OK button there. There's the OK button. And then there's the no thanks button. You can see no thanks. So when the user clicks on OK, you can see we ask that question again. That's what we did there. We said if the user clicks on OK, ask that permission again. Ask the user to permit that permission again. Now if I go to deny, then it shows it. And now the user can say OK. You can see I can basically go between these two the whole time. If the user says no thanks, you can see it says cannot be done. So that's the negative button, cannot be done. Okay, so the other option that the user can choose now, if the user clicks on it again, even though he says deny there and no thanks, if he clicks, it's going to ask him again. So now if the user gets tired of this, you can also click never ask again and say deny. So we need to handle that one as well. So that will be the last else here. The last else here will be if the user clicks on never ask again and then deny. So that's the last else. And we can just say something like, you can also take him now again to another method or whatever you want to do. So I'm just going to say we will never show this to you again. Right, so we've got this toast showing, we will never show this to you again. So let's just test that out. I'm going to run this again. So if we run the app now, and we say deny there, and we say the permission is important to save, and I say no thanks or whatever, it says this cannot be done. So it's basically this no thanks button. But if I run this again now, you can see it gives now the question, never ask this again, and then say deny. Oh, and then it still gives us this. Okay, so I think we've missed something here. So there we go. One thing that we need to add here is to add a simple if statement. So I'm going to add an if statement there. If activity compat dot should show request permission rationale. That's the method that we want here. So if we need to show the user the message, I'm going to explain that now. So it's main activity.this for the first argument. The second argument is the permission that we're testing for. So I'm going to say android.manifest.permission. And that write external storage again. So let's just put this all in this opening bracket. Okay, so I want to have this bracket there basically. And then this else should become part of it. So I'm going to cut that else there and have it there. Okay, let's just see if this is working out fine now. So I've got that opening bracket there. If we should show the permission rationale to write to the external storage, then we do this, else we will never show you this again. Okay, so let me just explain this part now. So you can see that I've got that first one is the outer if statement to check if the request code is this unique request code, and that's the last bracket there. Then I've got the if with this else if, and that's the last thing also there. And then I've got this if statement then that ends at the end, and then it's got the else that we will never show you this again. So sorry about the confusion there. I'll run through this again to make sure you understand this. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're checking, should we show the request permission rationale? Should we show the user this alert dialog? And this means the only time that we will do that, let's run this again. So basically the user can go and click on it. Let's just go back to the permissions again. Set that permission to off. Let's go to this one. If I click on it now, it asks me the permission. If the user says deny, it gives me this specific important permission, this dialog. So now the user did not say, never show me this again. So if the user don't say, never show me this again, then we should actually show this alert dialog. So this is the method that will run then. We should show the request permission rationale for write external storage. Yes, we should, because the user did not say never show me this again. Okay, so I hope you understand that part. So if I say no thanks now, and I click on it again, now I can go and say never ask me this again, and then say deny. And then it says we will never show you this again. And that's that one there. So basically this should show request permission rationale method is checking if the user clicked on never show me this again, or if he didn't click on it. So if we should show permission rationale, which means that the user did not click on that little tick box that says never show me this again, then we show the alert dialog with the negative and the positive button, giving the user a choice again. But if the user clicked on never show me this again, then this method will return false, and it will just show we will never show this to you again. So I'm just going to quickly run through the whole thing again with you. Let's just take that storage, do it like that, so we can ask that question again. Okay, so let's start from the beginning again. Right at the start, this is the button we want to ask the question. So if the user clicks on it and he says allow, we will say thank you, permission granted. Why did it go there? It went to this method, tested, is the permission granted? Yes, and it shows the toast permission granted. And now the second part there, the else, if the user then allowed it and we try to do it again, it will show permission granted, thank you. It's that toast there. Now let's take away that permission again. So I'm taking away the permission. Now let's try something else. Go back to the app. So if I click on that again and I click on deny, what's going to happen? So if I click on deny, there's the question again. If we click on deny, it comes in. It is that specific request code. And if the permission is denied, then we check, did the guy click on, let's say no thanks. Did the guy click on never ask again and then say deny? So this is what this method is checking. Should it show the permission rationale? Did the user click on never ask this again? If the user did not click on never ask again, then this one will ring true, and we will go into showing that alert dialog. So if I don't click there and I just say deny, it will start doing everything in this if statement. So it's going to show the alert dialog with the message and the title, with the OK button and the no thanks button. No thanks will just print out on the screen, cannot be done. There it is. But if I say OK, then what will happen? It's going to ask the user that question again. So if I say OK, it asks the question again, do you want to allow or deny? Now if I say never ask again and then deny, it means that this method will run basically false, and it's going to go to the else as part of that if statement. So it will print out, we will never show you this again. So if I say deny now, it will say we will never show you this again. And guess what? If I then click on the button again, it will keep on just showing we will never show you this again, because it remembers now that the user do not want to actually give permission to that thing, and we should not ask him again for it. So that's basically the false part for this method. So I hope you understand permissions, and you can do your own permissions now. Remember, this example was only for write external storage, but there's a lot of other permissions that you need to handle as well. If you remember this dangerous permissions, these are all the permissions that you need to handle in this specific way that I've shown you now. So go and play around with it, see if you can get this working, and good luck.